Warning: to avoid slanderous statements being made or unconstitutional censorship of this channel, I have to state that what you're about to hear is an opinion based on my own research or experiences, and although you may not agree with it, my opinion and the right to express it are both protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Some of what you are about to hear may be unsettling, inflammatory, disturbing, or outright shocking. I'm a firm believer of independent thought, now referred to as dissent, and am considered politically incorrect. Because I may also speak without a filter, listener discretion is strongly advised. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please hit that like and subscribe button below to receive notifications of new posted content and help support the growth of this channel. This is Samuel Storm Callahan, and welcome. You are now in the eye of the storm. So I want to talk about another one of Kamala Harris's many lies. And this time I want to talk about the statement she made on national television that if she's elected president, she has no intention of taking everyone's guns because she's a gun owner. And if someone were to break into her house, they would be shot. Okay, let's break it down. First of all, there has never been anyone that wanted to ban guns that was willing to give up their guns. To me, it's rather hypocritical, to say the very least, to hear someone talking about how bad guns are and how people shouldn't need guns or shouldn't have guns or whatever, while at the same time they're surrounded by Secret Service carrying guns. So again, it goes back to the statement I made just a minute ago. They just want to take your guns. They think you should give up your guns. They're not going to give theirs up. Secondly, what Kamala did not say was that she would be the one to shoot the person if someone came in her house. There was an implication there, but she did not say it. Why didn't she say it? Because first of all, no one's going to get near her house. Her house is protected by U.S. Secret Service. If someone tried to go near her house, yeah, they would be shot before they ever even got to the front door. Whether Kamala Harris actually has a gun or not is kind of irrelevant because she's surrounded by people with guns and will be for the rest of her natural life. So in 2023, a group of Congressional Democrats introduced a bill into Congress that would impose a 1,000% tariff on gun sales. Now, I understand that their intent is to impose this tariff at point of sale, which means that the gun shop owner has to charge you this tariff. Now, this bill doesn't apply to all weapons, mostly semi-automatic assault-style weapons and large-capacity ammunition feeding devices. But what they consider large capacity is anything that holds more than 10 rounds. But this is something that Nazis and communists do. They start out with something small that a lot of people can get behind, and they tell you it's for your own good. Now, if you want to look this up, this is H.R. 5135, and essentially what this will do to you is if you want to buy an $800 gun, it's going to cost you $8,800. If you want to buy a $30 30-round plastic magazine, it's going to cost you $330. And the only exceptions to that tariff would be military, federal officers, state officers, and local government officers. That's it. Everyone else will be subject to the 1,000% tariff. Now, there are two things that I wish was an absolute requirement for anyone to be able to run for federal office, whether it be congressman, someone in the executive branch, or federal court position of some sort, even though technically those are appointed. Regardless, those two things are: one, a credit check. I mean, let's be real, folks. These people spend money like there's no tomorrow and like we never have to pay it back. I'm almost willing to bet that if all of a sudden we required a credit check for them to hold office, we could get rid of at least half these idiots right off the bat. They wouldn't even qualify to hold the office anymore. So I think there should be some proof that they have a sense of fiscal responsibility before they can hold office. Secondly, they should be required to demonstrate that they have knowledge and understanding of the Constitution of the United States. Because I'm getting sick and tired of these idiots going into these offices and putting forth legislation that goes against the Constitution, as if they've never even looked at it, much less understand it. I mean, that should be required reading in school. But even when I was in school, it wasn't required. Why? I have no idea. But unfortunately, we live in an era where kids aren't even allowed to say the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, much less bring a Bible or display the flag or anything like that, because it might offend someone. But getting back to topic, a 1,000% tariff on guns is a de facto ban, because who the hell can afford that? Mr. Blue Collar sure as hell can't. It's taken everything he can get to pay the increased rent, increased mortgage, increased food cost, increased fuel cost, increased everything cost that has happened under this administration. It has even a worse effect than some of these municipalities that said, oh, well, we can't ban guns, but guess what? We're going to ban the ammunition. I think it just absolutely amazes me that so many people seem to believe that by outlawing a type of weapon, they're actually going to stop weapon violence. That is absolutely absurd. I can promise you that if someone wants to kill you, they don't give a rat's ass that the weapon they want to use is illegal to have. I mean, that's a minor thing compared to the act itself. Oh, we're gonna ban a gun. That's gonna stop the whole problem. You know, parts of Great Britain banned guns a long time ago. You know what's going on now? They're not using guns. They're stabbing each other. Think about that. And I know somebody's gonna say, well, the point of it is to try to make it so that that weapon is not available anymore. That's not gonna do you any good. They're just gonna get a different kind of weapon, and then they're gonna want to ban that one too. I mean, if someone were going around bashing people with baseball bats, are they gonna outlaw baseball? What about a golf club? Would they outlaw golf? I mean, if you were to ban everything, people would literally be hitting each other in the head with rocks. Everyone except, remember what I said earlier about the people that want to ban guns only want you to give up your guns, they're going to keep theirs? Yeah. That's what I'm kind of getting at. Remember what I said about having an understanding of the Constitution? That gets back to understanding the intent. And the intent is pretty clear to me. I've actually read it. I mean, it's really not that difficult to understand. And it gripes me to no end when people think they need a lawyer or a group of lawyers or a federal judge or an interpreter or whatever it is they think they need to understand the intent that people had when they wrote this 250 years ago. I'm sorry, but that's just moronic to me. Folks, it wasn't a group of Ivy League graduates that wrote the Constitution. It's been obvious to me forever that since they don't have an understanding of what actually is in the Constitution, they don't know what's not in it either. So let me tell you, in case you've never read it, what is not in there. First of all, the Constitution of the United States does not guarantee you the right to kill your own child. I mean, I can't even imagine the people who wrote the Constitution 250 years ago thinking it would be a good idea to put a provision in there that allows a woman on her own to decide to kill a baby because that child is inconvenient to her. I'll probably just pissed off half the people that are listening to this, but quite frankly, I really don't care. When people ask me if I'm pro-life or pro-choice, I tell them I'm both. And I'm happy to explain that at another time. Let's get back to the gun topic. And while we're on that subject, I want to talk about the stupid lawsuits, okay? Now, if I'm sitting in an intersection at a red light and I'm minding my own business, just sitting there at a dead stop, waiting for the light to turn green, and some idiot screwing with their cell phone rams into the back of my vehicle at full speed, and that vehicle just happens to be, well, let's just say it's a Chevrolet. Do I have the right to sue Chevrolet? Should special taxes be imposed upon Chevrolet? Should they be at all accountable for the fact that the moron driving the car was too busy playing with their phone to realize that there was a car stopped in front of them? No, not at all. The very concept of that is absolutely absurd. So why in the hell do people think they have the right to sue gun manufacturers because some of the idiots who buy their weapons or steal their weapons or whatever use them in a manner that was not intended? And I probably struck a nerve there too. Guess what? I don't care. But I can assure you that there is no weapons manufacturer in the United States that makes a weapon with the intent of gangs using it to kill kids in neighborhoods and for people to commit murder with. They manufacture these things for defense, for hunting, for good purposes. Now, they're in the business to make a profit, yes, but they're all firm supporters of the Second Amendment because they understand the importance of that Second Amendment. That Second Amendment protects every other aspect of the Constitution. And since it's so obvious that so many people in Congress aren't very familiar with it, I'm going to read it to you right now. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Over the years, I've had a number of idiots approach me and say, oh, well, that says militia. That means the military. They're the only ones that should have weapons. Folks, a militia is not the military. Look up the definition of militia, and you will learn that there is an actual difference. A militia is simply a group of armed citizens, not a trained military, but a group of regular armed citizens. Now, when the Second Amendment was written, ordinary citizens were allowed to possess the same weapons that the military was allowed to possess. That's not the case anymore. I mean, I'm sorry, you could take one trained soldier and he could blow an entire squad of regular militia away with no problem at all. But that wasn't the case back in the 1700s. The playing field was a lot more level. And politicians didn't go around surrounded by military-style weaponry telling people that they couldn't have anything stronger than a BB gun. And the reason I brought up the abortion issue as an example of what is not in the Constitution is I find it just absolutely moronic that it is typically the people who will stand stand up and say, we need to get rid of all the guns to protect our children. Those are the same people who say a woman should have the right to choose whether or not to kill her own child. So let me get this straight. You want to ban guns so that there's no risk of someone else killing your child because you want the exclusive right to do it yourself. Is that the way it works? Or did I piss you off? Good. You people make me sick. Now, I'm sure you've heard a couple of terms over the years. One of those is oath keeper. Do you know what an oath keeper is? An oath keeper is basically a member of the U.S. Armed Forces that fully intends to keep their oath no matter what. And if you're not familiar with the oath, I'm going to read that to you right now. Now, I just want to point out that as I read this, I'm not going to state a name, but between the words I and do at the beginning, the soldier in question will actually state their full name. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. Now here's where it gets sticky. An oath keeper is a soldier who has made the determination that he is going to abide by the Constitution even if the orders of the President and the officers that serve over him contradict that. Now it has been said that the oath keepers and the 3%ers should be considered domestic terrorists. Wow, that's really a stretch, don't you think? Someone is saying that they are going to defend the Constitution over any other consideration, no matter what, and you're going to consider them a terrorist. What the hell kind of world are we living in now? I thought the American flag was flying. And while we're on that subject, if you don't understand what a 3%er is a reference to, and I realize this is something they don't teach kids in school, and that is just absolutely pathetic that they don't. All too often when they talk about the Revolutionary War, they would have you think that everyone was united in their stand against the British. Well, technically, that's some really nice patriotic BS. But it is just that, it's BS. Because truthfully, only 3% of the people on the American side here actually stood up to fight the British. 3%. They were sick and tired of having to deal with a tyrant on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So they rose up against the British and fought and won. Now, why don't they teach that in school? Because knowledge is power, and that is dangerous power. And they hate for anybody to realize that such a small number, 3%, that is a tiny amount. That's minuscule. But they don't want you to realize that that's all it took to change the world. It was just 3%. And a 3%er is basically just someone who is willing to stand up against a tyrant. And to be quite frank, we need a lot more of those. The 3%ers, not the tyrants. We have enough of those already, referring to the tyrants. Now, for the sake of you, it can't happen here types, let me explain to you what happened to the German people who thought the same thing. To make a long story short, and I'm not going to give a history lesson on this, but in 1933, the Germans, a certain group of Germans, staged a false flag operation where they burned down their own parliament building. Now, they blamed the communists for this, so they decided they were going to wage war against the communists. But because this was considered a terrorist attack, they passed what they called the Enabling Act, which pretty much decimated the German Constitution and allowed them to go around and start seizing guns and all this. Then after they took all the guns from all the citizens, then it started getting really bad. You either did what you told, or they would come get you and take you and basically burn you and send your remains back to your family in a little box with a skull and crossbones on it, warning them not to do the same thing that you did. The German people were convinced it couldn't happen there either, but it did. And then we ended up having to fight the Germans in World War II. Of course, when we first got involved in World War II, our beef technically wasn't with the Germans, it was with the Japanese. But the point I'm trying to make is this can happen anywhere if the people allow it. The Nazis convinced the German people that this was in their interest for their own safety and security, and it ended up being the end of freedom in Germany. If they can take your guns, then they can take control of your food supply and your water supply, and then they've got you. You can't fight. You don't have a means to fight. You're going to be too weak to fight. And they can get you to do whatever they want you to do, because if you don't, they're going to take out you or your family. Oh, that can't happen here. I know that's what some of you are thinking. Guess what? It can. And when they start talking about trying to take your guns for your own safety and security and for the sake of your children, it's a bunch of crap. Anyone that tells you you need to disarm when you are a law-abiding citizen, they do not have you or your family's safety at heart. I can promise you that. Now let's talk about the the school shootings for a minute while we're on the subject of gun bans. I'm going to tell you why I believe personally that there are more school shootings than anything else as far as some kind of act of gun-related terrorism. Most people will say they do that because that's going to get them the maximum amount of media attention. But there's a little more to it than that, because quite typically schools and the area around them are considered gun-free zones. In other words, you're not allowed to carry a gun there. So law-abiding citizens are not going to carry a gun anywhere in that area. The people that do these school shootings, they're going to try to do some damage, but they know that if they go to a school, they're not likely to be shot back at because no one there is going to be armed. Oh, but we have a security officer at the school. Yeah, okay. A 60-year-old man with a 9mm against a raging lunatic with an assault weapon or a shotgun or whatever. Folks, that's not going to work. Unless, of course, that 60-year-old man with a 9mm happens to be an ex-Marine or something like that. Then he's probably going to screw up that guy with the AR-15 and most likely try to shove it up his ass. I mean, let's be real. A Marine is going to defend those kids. But how many ex-Marines do we have doing school security? And some idiot is out there right now saying, see, you just made my point. We should get rid of assault weapons. No, we don't need to get rid of assault weapons. First of all, what we have available to us are assault-style weapons. They are not assault weapons. There's a difference. Want me to explain the difference? An assault weapon can be put into full automatic mode. It's as simple as that. A semi-automatic weapon, it doesn't matter if it's an AR-15, an AK-47, or a 9mm, or a 22. They still work the same way. They fire one bullet at a time. And then some people say, well, we're more concerned about the caliber. Folks, you can kill someone with a 22 long rifle if you know where to shoot them. But you have to be really up close and personal to be able to pull that stunt off. And let's be real, anybody that's going to shoot up a school isn't quite right in the head anyway. And if they go in there jacked up on meth or PCP or coke or whatever, they're going to have so much adrenaline going on right then that they're going to be very difficult to knock down. It's a proven fact. You can put 6 bullets in someone's chest and they can still come at you and kill you if they're jacked up and their adrenaline is running that high. It's just a fact. There have even been isolated cases where people have been shot in the head and they're still going for a little bit. Me personally, I like a weapon like the Taurus Judge. You get one of those and you drop a shell in there like a Winchester PDX or something like that, and you have an intruder in your house and they're armed and you have to shoot that intruder in the chest, guess what? You don't even need to aim. It's point and shoot. If you hit them with that round, they ain't getting up. And if they do get up, best thing you can do is run like hell because they're not human. But not before emptying the gun into them first, because a Taurus Judge is a 5-round weapon. Me personally, anytime I've shot at a silhouette, I didn't shoot at the torso, I shot at the head. Because when someone plans to commit, and I consider shooting up a school an act of domestic terrorism, when someone plans to do that, typically they're going to be wearing body armor. Even though they know that common citizens are not going to be armed around there because they're law-abiding, they're probably still going to be wearing body armor, but they don't have body armor on the head. So anytime I've ever shot at a silhouette, I practice shooting at the head rather than the chest or torso. That's just me, and I would really hate to see what would happen if you shot somebody in the head with a PDX round. I mean, you can forget an open casket, that's for damn sure. Of course, some jackass is probably going to listen to this and say, hey, we need to ban that. Moron. Now, I just want to point something out. John Q. Public is typically law-abiding when it comes to his firearms, and he's not going to carry it anywhere where they tell him he's not allowed. So John Q. is definitely not going to try to carry a weapon into a courthouse. Of course, he couldn't really get away with it now, unless it's a non-detectable type, because you're pretty thoroughly searched when you go into any courthouse in this country now. But the Taurus Judge actually got its name because judges in Florida were known to carry these underneath their robes when they were sitting on the bench, so that if there was some kind of an issue in the courtroom, they would have a weapon to defend themselves with, or someone else in the courtroom for that matter. Taurus actually investigated this, and when they realized how many judges were buying these weapons just for that reason, that's why the Judge got its name. It was called something else before, and I can't even remember what it was, but when they realized that, they renamed it the Judge. That's just a little bit of a fun fact, but anyway, kudos to Taurus. It's an awesome weapon. But to sum it up, you really need to watch these left Democrat extremists, because they are determined to take your weapons one way or the other, even if all they can do is put a tax on it so high that you can't afford it, which technically does violate the intent of the United States Constitution. And I'm sorry, but that intent is pretty darn clear. But the next time some idiot stands up on a podium and tells you that you need to give up your weapons for safety and security reasons and for the sake of your family, take note of the fact that they're surrounded by people with with guns, and they're not going to give their weapons up. They just want you to give yours up so that you have no defense left. A very wise man by the name of Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." But I would embellish on that and say they will lose both. And I will say to you that it is better to die standing than it is to live on your knees. So all of you out there listening should truly be thankful for all the people who are good, honest, hardworking citizens and choose to carry a weapon, because that might be the only thing that defends you sometime when you're in a bad situation. The only way to beat a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. Not all good guys wear badges, and not all those who wear badges are good guys. And I realize that's going to offend a lot of people. There are a lot of good cops out there, but let's face it, you've got some bad seeds here and there. And cops also have to take an oath. And I will tell you this right now, if they're willing to violate that oath just because someone above them told them to, they're either not a good guy or someone cut their balls off. One of the two. Either way, they don't deserve the badge. For the record, I do back the blue, as long as the blue continues to have our backs. I'm a firm believer in the Constitution of the United States, and I think that is the supreme law of the land. So any law that is passed that violates the Constitution of the United States, as far as I'm concerned, is invalid. Did you hear what I just said? Any law that goes against the Constitution is invalid. And if you want to get technical about it, any order given to a United States soldier that goes against the Constitution, his first duty is to disobey that order. His second duty is to prevent anyone else from carrying it out. Think about that. That is not a situation that anyone wants to be in, but unfortunately I'm afraid that at some point it's going to become a reality. I'm proud to say that I am a card-carrying member of the oldest civil rights organization in the United States, and if you don't know what I'm referring to, it would be the National Rifle Association. This is Samuel Storm Callahan, and you've been in the eye of the storm.